Trust was a way of life in the small town of Ashford, Tennessee, until Lily Carter got missing. As neighbors searched and prayed, the real monster stood among them, hiding behind a familiar smile. This is the story of Daniel Whitmore, the man no one ever suspected. Ashford, Tennessee wasn't the kind of place you expected evil to visit. It was a town built on Sunday sermons, little league games, and handshakes that meant something. The biggest news most summers was the county fair or a high school sweetheart getting engaged. That's why Lily Carter's disappearance hit like a lightning bolt out of a clear sky. Lily had it all: beauty, brains, kindness that wasn't fake. At 17, she balanced volleyball, honor roll, and her part-time job at the diner without ever missing Sunday service at First Baptist. On the night of June 17th, she went to a bonfire at Jameson Park, a summer tradition. Friends remembered her laughing by the fire pit, sipping soda from a red cup, planning a road trip to Nashville before college swallowed them up. She left around 10:30 p.m., waving goodbye with that easy smile she was known for. It was the last time anyone saw her. By morning, panic gripped her house. Her bed was untouched. Her phone buzzed and buzzed on her nightstand. Her car sat abandoned in the Jameson Park parking lot, keys still in the ignition. No signs of a struggle. No note. Just silence. Word spread fast. By noon, search parties formed. Volunteers combing fields, riverbanks, and old trails with flashlights and prayer. Ashford wasn't just worried. It was terrified. Bad things didn't happen here. Until now. In the early days after Lily Carter vanished, Ashford became a town on edge. Neighbors who used to leave their doors unlocked now double-checked every latch at night. Parents tightened their grip on their kids' curfews. Men who once shared beers after Friday night football games now eyed each other with suspicion. The Ashford Police Department, 5 officers strong, wasn't equipped for a full-scale missing person investigation. Chief Bill Rawlins, a man better known for breaking up bar fights than solving serious crimes, admitted as much on day 2. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, TBI, was called in. Agents swarmed Ashford like a summer storm. They set up headquarters in the old library annex, plastered the walls with maps, lists, photographs. The search for Lily Carter became systematic. They started with last known location: Jameson Park, gravel parking lot, woods sloping down toward the river. Volunteers, local officers, and TBI agents moved through the terrain in grid lines. They found one flip-flop, turned out not to be Lily's. Empty beer cans, a broken bracelet clasp, but no chain, no charms. It wasn't much. Interviews began. Anyone who had been at the bonfire was questioned. Friends, boyfriends, past and present, teachers, coaches, anyone who had spoken to Lily in the last 72 hours. The teenager stories blurred together. Music, drinking, harmless flirting, a few petty arguments. Nothing that pointed clearly to abduction. Macy Dillard, Lily's best friend since 3rd grade, mentioned something strange during her second interview. Lily had seemed off lately, stressed about leaving for college, Macy said, but also like she was worried about something, like somebody was bothering her. When asked who, Macy shook her head. She never said. By week's end, a name floated to the surface: Eli Warren. Eli was a senior dropout with a reputation: minor drug charges, speeding tickets, a bad attitude. He had been at the bonfire, drunk, bragging about his truck, showing off a switchblade. Witnesses said he had tried to corner Lily for a dance, and she brushed him off. Officers hauled Eli in for questioning. He folded fast, his arrogance cracking under pressure. He admitted he'd been high that night, weed and a little meth, but he swore he never laid a hand on Lily. TBI verified Eli's alibi through gas station footage and credit card records. He was across town getting into a fight outside a Waffle House at the exact time Lily vanished. Eli was a dead end. Investigators widened their net. They looked at registered sex offenders within a 50-mile radius, truckers who passed through town, random drifters, tourists, even construction workers at a nearby highway project. They found plenty of shady characters, but no solid leads. Meanwhile, volunteers grew exhausted. Flyers curled at the edges under the hot sun. Hope began to wither. And in the background, always there, always helpful, was Coach Daniel Whitmore. He organized search efforts. He coordinated food drives for the search teams. He stood behind Lily's parents at every press conference, a hand steady on Mr. Carter's shoulder. He was, everyone said, one of the good ones. Nobody suspected. Not yet. Daniel Whitmore was the kind of man small towns built statues for, if Ashford ever built statues. Born and raised in town, he had coached volleyball and softball for over 15 years. He sang bass in the church choir, helped organize the Memorial Day Parade, and served 3 terms on the Parks and Recreation Board. He lived alone in a modest, well-kept brick house at the end of Willow Lane. No wife, no children. People said he had been unlucky in love, too devoted to the kids he coached to settle down. Whitmore's face was on every search poster for Lily Carter. Not because he was missing, but because he was searching. He led prayer circles. He manned booths collecting donations for the Carter family. He hugged weeping parents, pressed sweaty palms, and looked heartbroken when reporters stuck cameras in his face. He was exactly where he wanted to be, in the center, above suspicion, helping. What nobody in Ashford realized was that Whitmore had been thinking about Lily for a long time, watching her grow up, from a shy 8th grader to a confident senior, and nursing an obsession that turned darker with each passing year. But he wasn't foolish. He understood the risks. He understood how investigations worked. Whitmore had spent months planning, studying, reading about past crimes, forensic techniques, missing persons investigations. He learned, avoid personal electronics, avoid leaving DNA, create distractions, insert yourself into the search early to control narratives. Every choice he made that night was calculated. The burner phone he used to lure Lily to the river was bought in cash at a truck stop 50 miles away. The car he used was borrowed from an old acquaintance, an alcoholic who wouldn't even remember lending it. Whitmore chose the river because the currents were unpredictable. If the worst came, he knew bodies dumped there could be carried for miles before resurfacing, if ever. He wore gloves, long sleeves. He drove back roads only he knew, paths he used for hunting, paths never touched by security cameras or highway patrols. Afterward, he burned the gloves, clothes, and anything else that might tie him to the night. He didn't panic. He didn't rush. He watched the sunrise through his kitchen window and waited for Ashford to start looking. Whitmore was one of the first to suggest the bonfire search when Lily didn't come home. He made sure everyone saw him helping. He even discovered a soda can by the riverbank himself, pretending it could be evidence, ensuring his fingerprints were mingled among hundreds of others. When questioned, he offered detailed answers about the bonfire, where he was, who he talked to when he left. He volunteered information before being asked, creating the illusion of openness. In every interview, he was cooperative but just rattled enough to seem human. He expressed concern, not defensiveness. When asked if he noticed anyone suspicious that night, he shook his head solemnly. All those kids, they're like my own. I'd do anything to protect them. It worked. The town saw a grieving mentor, not a predator. Ashford wanted to believe in Whitmore. In a place where everyone knew everyone, the idea that evil could look so familiar was too much to bear. Better to believe it was a drifter, a stranger, someone from outside. Meanwhile, Whitmore kept busy. He stayed visible. He stayed helpful. He stayed in control. The perfect citizen. The perfect mask. Months passed, and Lily Carter's disappearance shifted from breaking news to a quiet ache that settled over Ashford like a fog. The posters faded. The search parties dwindled. People got tired of being scared. They wanted life to feel normal again. Whitmore understood this better than anyone. Normalcy was his shield. He returned to coaching, leading summer camps for the younger kids. He volunteered to organize the fall festival. He even spearheaded a scholarship fund in Lily's name, raising money in her honor, speaking at events about hope and perseverance. It was a masterstroke. Ashford rallied behind him. The Carter family clung to him like a lifeline. And the TBI? They quietly moved their resources elsewhere, their theories pointing more toward random abduction or human trafficking. Whitmore had gotten away with it. Almost. It happened at the Ashford Fall fundraiser, a barbecue and auction held in the community center. Whitmore wasn't much of a drinker, but that night he accepted glass after glass of cheap whiskey from grateful townsfolk slapping him on the back, thanking him for keeping hope alive. By 10 o'clock, his composure slipped. Macy Dillard, Lily's best friend, found herself cornered by him near the raffle tables. Whitmore leaned in too close, his breath thick with booze, his eyes strangely glassy. He said, "Sometimes bad things happen to good people, but you gotta let the past stay buried, Macy. You gotta let it go." He smiled afterward, like it was a joke, but Macy felt ice crawl up her spine. The next morning, she reported it to the TBI tip line. At first, the report was logged with a dozen others. Nothing tangible, no evidence, but it was enough to make Agent Sarah Keene, one of the lead investigators who had never fully bought the random stranger theory, take a second look at Daniel Whitmore. Keene dug back into Whitmore's interview transcripts. She noticed something she hadn't the first time. Whitmore anticipated questions that hadn't even been asked yet. He volunteered details to steer investigators toward the idea of a stranger. He always kept himself close to the center of the search efforts. It wasn't proof, but it was odd. Keene pushed for a deeper background check. Turned up nothing criminal. Whitmore's record was clean. Too clean. Frustrated by the lack of evidence but trusting her instincts, Keene proposed an undercover operation. They sent in an agent, Tom Nolan, posing as a new volunteer at the church's community outreach program. Nolan was good at what he did. Over the course of 3 months, he built a friendship with Whitmore. They talked about hunting, fishing, coaching. Nolan played the part of a man fed up with modern law enforcement. He hinted at having a shady past, enough to suggest he wouldn't judge. It worked. Whitmore, craving someone who understood, began letting his guard down in small ways. Offhand comments about people being too trusting. Jokes about how forensics ain't like TV, real life's messier. The way he lingered too long at the old river trails during one of their fishing trips. It wasn't a confession, but it was enough to make Keene believe they were finally closing in. The breakthrough came during a late-night conversation at Whitmore's house. Sitting on the back porch, sipping beers, Whitmore said, "You know, Tom, you plan right, you think ahead. You can make a person disappear. You can make it so they're just gone. Like they never even existed. People tell themselves anything to sleep at night." Nolan wired, pushed gently. Whitmore just chuckled and changed the subject. But it was enough. Enough to get a search warrant. Enough to finally peel back the layers of the mask. Armed with a warrant, TBI agents searched Whitmore's house first. But it was pristine. Too pristine. No laptop. No journals. No private papers. It was like Whitmore had scrubbed every trace of private life from existence. But then they found the key. Literally. A small, nondescript key tucked inside a hollowed-out Bible on his bookshelf. It wasn't labeled. It didn't match anything in his house. Curious, they expanded the search radius. 3 days later, they found an abandoned hunting cabin Whitmore had access to, property technically owned by a defunct sportsman's club he used to belong to years ago. The cabin was empty at first glance. Dust everywhere, cobwebs, broken furniture. But behind a loose panel in the crawlspace they found what they needed. A piece of Lily's backpack, the one she'd decorated with little sunflowers. A charm bracelet, tarnished but unmistakable. A torn notebook page with Lily's handwriting. The words were simple. "Please help me." It was enough. Enough to arrest Daniel Whitmore. Enough to finally break the spell he'd cast over Ashford. When the news broke that coach Daniel Whitmore had been arrested for the disappearance of Lily Carter, Ashford, Tennessee stopped breathing. It didn't make sense. Couldn't be real. Parents who had trusted him with their children. Students who had admired him. Friends who had broken bread with him. All of them were blindsided. The morning after his arrest, Whitmore appeared in court for the first time. Orange jumpsuit, handcuffed hands, expression blank. The town packed the courtroom, stunned, betrayed, desperate for answers. The Carter family sat rigid in the front row, Lily's mother clutching a crumpled tissue like a lifeline. Whitmore pled not guilty. No confession, no emotion. He simply stared straight ahead, his lips pressed into a thin line. Prosecutors built their case carefully, brick by brick. They had the burner phone, traced back to a store near the highway, surveillance showing Whitmore at the truck stop weeks before the disappearance, testimony from undercover agent Tom Nolan, forensic evidence from the hunting cabin, including Lily's blood on a fragment of wood in the crawlspace. But there was no body. Without Lily's remains, the defense hammered the narrative that the evidence was circumstantial. They painted Whitmore as a scapegoat, a man framed by a town desperate for closure. The trial dragged on for 6 weeks. Every day Ashford came to watch. Every day Whitmore sat still, composed, unbreakable. It was Macy Dillard's testimony that changed everything. When she described the moment Whitmore leaned in at the fundraiser, the sick feeling, the chilling words, the courtroom shifted. You could feel it, a collective understanding that evil hadn't come from outside. It had grown here, right among them. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they returned, their verdict was clear: of kidnapping, of murder, sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Whitmore showed no reaction. As the judge read the sentence, Lily's mother collapsed into her husband's arms, sobbing. Ashford changed after the trial. The town that had once trusted blindly learned to look harder. The smiles were still there, at church, at Little League, but they came slower now. More guarded. The Carter family moved away within a year. The empty chair at their dinner table was too much. Macy Dillard went on to study criminal justice, dedicating her life to the memory of the girl who never got to chase her own dreams. The river near Jameson Park was fenced off. The trails were left to grow wild. And Whitmore, he sat in a concrete cell 3 counties over, another ghost swallowed by the system he thought he could outsmart. Every June 17th, Ashford still holds a candlelight vigil for Lily Carter. They gather at Jameson Park, not to dwell on how she was taken, but to remember who she was: a bright light, a good heart, a reminder that even in the safest places, vigilance matters. Because evil doesn't always wear a stranger's face. Sometimes it wears a coach's whistle. Sometimes it shakes your hand and smiles. And sometimes, if you aren't careful, it disappears back into the crowd, waiting for its moment. Ashford learned that the hard way, and it never forgot.